All right, y'all, the NBA draft has come and gone, and there is plenty to digest and discuss surrounding what took place at the Barclays Center Thursday evening. And I wanted to talk about selection that the national media seems to have kind of ignored for the most part, even though a lot of people going into the draft kind of identified this particular pick as being an inflection point, and that's Keegan Murray, the 4th overall pick going to Sacramento. Now, when the pick happened, I think there was kind of a collective groan from the Kings fan base, and, fair enough. I think I did a video where I argued that Kings should probably trade back a couple of picks, get Keegan Murray, maybe an additional asset, for trading back, and, kind of capitalize on the hype surrounding Jaden Ivey. And there was certainly people that agreed with me. There were people who thought, just take Jaden Ivey at 4. He's the most talented available, and figure out the fit with that kind of crowded backcourt with De'Aaron Fox and Davion Mitchell. Now, I could also, propose the idea of they should have taken Ivey at 4, so they had the actual asset and then traded him. But, if Keegan Murray was their guy and you go that route, you might not end up with Keegan Murray. And, hindsight will kind of, look back on this draft. No one knows yet. A lot of people think, Jaden Ivey is going to be a way better player than Keegan Murray will be. And I'm here to kind of, push the brakes a little bit on that, because I think Keegan Murray, for whatever reason, has kind of been disrespected here and kind of categorized as a high floor, low ceiling guy. Ivey has way more upside. Ivey's a more prolific scorer. I'm not sure that's particularly true. I get that Ivey has kind of the vertical explosiveness and, all the highlight reel stuff, the speed, the transition play. But you look at the numbers, and obviously college numbers don't necessarily translate to the NBA. Players' roles change. Obviously, most of these guys were the focal point of the offense when they were in college. That's all fair. And a lot of people think that the Purdue offense actually hurt Jaden Ivey quite a bit. So there's that. But you look at a lot of the kind of analytics. You look at win shares. You look at offensive and defensive box score plus minus. You look at offensive and defensive rating. And Keegan Murray is substantially better than Jaden Ivey in all of those categories. And, there's kind of a debate about whether, I think everyone agrees Jaden Ivey is probably more, quote unquote, talented than Keegan Murray. But my argument here is that Keegan Murray is probably a more of a winning player, someone that's going to contribute to a playoff team, which is exactly what Sacramento wants, because a big part of this is where each franchise is in kind of, in the construction of their roster. And with Detroit, they're not trying to make the playoffs. They're trying to build around Cade Cunningham and Sadiq Bey. And so that makes sense for Jaden Ivey, makes sense for them. Meanwhile, the Kings are, amidst this playoff drought, and they're trying to end that ASAP and ideally this upcoming season. And so Keegan Murray makes the most sense for them. And so no matter what happens, I think we have to remember in the moment the situation that both franchises were in and why Keegan Murray made a ton of sense for Sacramento. With that said, I also want to point out that, I think Ivey's identified as this scorer. Murray averaged more points than he did per game, first of all. And secondly, I don't think scoring is as a unique talent as what Keegan Murray could bring, especially defensively, in terms of being a perimeter defender that can defend multiple positions, that is willing to be in the trenches and not, demand the ball. Offensively, can play off ball, can shoot, corner threes, can shoot off the dribble, can shoot off of, just off passes. And even, he's shown that he can post up if he gets a mismatch on a small guard. He can post up. So the idea, I think scoring is kind of equivalent in a lot of ways, that I think both guys with their respective teams will get a lot of open looks because of who they're playing with. terms of Cade Cunningham getting shots for Ivy, and then De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis getting open looks for Murray. I mean, everyone's going to focus on the kind of fulcrums of Fox and Sabonis, and Keegan Murray is him and Harrison Barnes, if they decide to keep him, off ball, will get a ton of open looks around the perimeter. And I think he'll be able to knock him down if that kind of 40% in college can translate to around 40% in the pros. I mean, Keegan Murray is going to be a huge asset, and someone that, as we kind of digest the NBA Finals, the guys who are playing in the crunch time minutes are the two-way players. Even Steph Curry has improved his defense quite a bit over the course of his career, that he's not a defensive liability anymore. And so Keegan Murray is it's easier to see him in that scenario than it is Jaden Ivey. And that's okay for now for the Pistons, because first of all, they have Cade can defend, Sadiq can defend, Isaiah Stewart. They have guys that can kind of cover up some of Ivey's shortcomings, but they're also not looking to win playoff series quite yet. So that's fine. But down the road, if Ivey cannot address that, then you might come back and look and be like, yeah, Murray was a better player. Just made more sense long term. And so if Ivey, becomes one of these 20-point-a-game kind of guys, I mean, there's plenty of guys like that. I don't think if you're Sacramento, you can find guys that can score. There are like the Jordan Clarksons of the world that will give you, 15 a game and pretty good value at that. So there aren't that many Keegan Murray types that you can easily acquire either through free agency or through trades, because these guys are so valuable. You need these guys. And the last point I'll make too is something I think is often overlooked, and that is, a guy's personality, a guy's willingness to kind of buy in. And it seemed like Jaden Ivey and his camp were a little reluctant with Sacramento. Obviously doesn't have the best reputation for development, isn't the best kind of city to live in. But Keegan Murray said, excited for the opportunity, ready to get going, kind of excited about what's going on in Sacramento. And for a small market team like that, especially with their reputation, that is huge. Especially, it was devastating when Halliburton left, because he was completely, committed to that team. But Sabonis coming in kind of brought that same energy. And if Murray is willing to, buy in as well, I think that is paramount in terms of trying to build a contender, or at least a playoff team, play-in team in Sacramento. And so I get it, Kings fans. I understand that even if you like Murray, they could have gotten him a couple picks later. But I'm here to tell you, I think you're going to be okay. I think you're really going to like Keegan Murray slotted into that starting five. And we'll see what happens. I think Detroit will be really excited with Ivy as well. Feel free to disagree. Feel free to provide your take on it. I'd love to hear it. But for now, take care of yourselves, take it easy, and I'll see you next time.